When she arrives in the picturesque, tight-knit town of Maple Ridge, Dana is met with more than just skepticism. She's confronted by Greg Tanner, a retired officer determined to see her fail. As tensions escalate, Tanner's campaign of lies and manipulation spreads through the community, turning neighbors into adversaries and putting Dana's career on the line. But Dana isn't just fighting for her reputation, she's fighting for justice, her family's legacy, and the chance to prove she belongs in a town that would rather see her gone. With her home vandalized, her leadership questioned, and time running out, Dana uncovers a shocking conspiracy that ties Tanner's grudge to her late father. Armed with truth, allies, and unshakable resolve, she must confront Tanner in a public showdown that will determine not just her future, but the soul of the community. Based on a true story. Before we dive into this powerful story, let us know where you're tuning in from, and if you find it compelling, don't forget to hit subscribe. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden glow over the neatly trimmed lawns and pastel-colored homes of Maple Ridge. Dana Wright pulled her SUV into the driveway of her new house, her heart a mix of anticipation and unease. This was supposed to be a new chapter, a fresh start as the newly appointed police chief of this suburban town. But she knew the weight of expectations would be as heavy as the boxes she had yet to unload. She stepped out of the car, stretching her arms and glancing around the quiet street. Children's bikes lay sprawled on sidewalks, sprinklers danced on emerald lawns, and curtains twitched in windows as curious neighbors watched the new arrival. Dana squared her shoulders. She'd faced far worse than nosy stares in her years as a beat cop and detective, but the subtle unease prickled at her all the same. As she opened the trunk to grab a box, the sharp voice of an older man broke the silence. "Hey! What are you doing here?" Dana turned to see a man in his 60s marching toward her from across the street. His face was etched with suspicion, his brows drawn tight under a baseball cap. He wore a faded flannel shirt, the kind you'd find in an old farm supply catalog, and he pointed a finger at her like she'd just committed a crime. "I'm sorry, can I help you?" Dana asked, keeping her tone measured. "Help me?" He snorted. "You're the one trespassing. Who do you think you are, pulling into someone else's driveway like this?" Dana felt the weight of the man's judgment in his gaze. He didn't see a new neighbor or the town's police chief. He saw a stranger who didn't fit his narrow idea of who belonged in Maple Ridge. "This is my house," Dana replied, lifting her chin slightly. "I just moved in." The man's face twisted into a scowl. "Don't play games with me. I've lived here for 20 years, and I know every family on this block. You don't belong here." The accusation hung in the air like a storm cloud. Dana bit back the sharp retort rising in her throat. Years of training taught her to stay calm under pressure, even when it felt personal. "If you have any doubts, I'd be happy to show you my deed," she said. The man's scowl deepened. "I don't need to see anything. I'm calling the police." Dana blinked, stunned for a moment. Before she could respond, the man was already pulling out his phone. She sighed and leaned against the SUV, glancing at the neighbors peeking out from behind their curtains. A few lingered on their porches, watching the scene unfold like it was the evening's entertainment. Minutes later, a police cruiser rolled onto the street, its lights flashing faintly in the dimming light. Two officers stepped out, their postures stiffening when they saw Dana. Recognition flickered in their eyes. "Chief Wright?" one of them asked, his voice a mix of surprise and discomfort. "That's me," Dana replied, her lips curving into a humorless smile. The older man froze, his phone still in his hand. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water as he processed the officer's words. "Wait, what?" he stammered. "She's the—" "Yes, Mr. Tanner," the officer confirmed, addressing the man by name. "This is Dana Wright, the new chief of police for Maple Ridge." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. Dana could feel Tanner's embarrassment radiating off him, but she didn't relish the moment. She was too tired for petty victories. "Well," Tanner muttered after a beat, his face flushed with color. "I didn't know that." "You could have asked," Dana replied, her tone sharp but controlled. The officers exchanged awkward glances before stepping in to diffuse the tension. They apologized for the inconvenience and assured Tanner everything was in order. Dana remained silent, her arms crossed as the man shuffled back across the street, muttering under his breath. When the officers turned back to Dana, one of them hesitated before speaking. "Welcome to Maple Ridge, Chief," he said, his voice uncertain. "Thanks," Dana replied, offering a small nod. "I have a feeling it's going to be interesting." As the cruiser pulled away, the street fell silent again, though Dana could still feel the weight of the neighbors' stares. She exhaled slowly, willing herself to focus on the task ahead. Unpacking could wait until morning. Inside the house, she sat on a box in the empty living room, the confrontation replaying in her mind. Tanner's words had cut deeper than she cared to admit. "You don't belong here." This wasn't the welcome she'd hoped for, but it wasn't entirely unexpected. Maple Ridge was a tight-knit community, resistant to change. Dana knew winning their trust wouldn't be easy. Still, she hadn't expected the challenge to start before she'd even unpacked her first box. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "How's the new house? Settling in okay?" Dana hesitated before typing a response. "It's fine," she wrote. "Just getting started." She left out the confrontation, the flashing lights, the sharp stares. Her mother didn't need to know, not yet, anyway. For now, Dana would shoulder the burden alone. As the evening stretched into night, Dana sat in the quiet house, her determination hardening. She wasn't just here to do a job, she was here to prove that she belonged, no matter what Greg Tanner or anyone else thought. And if this was the start, she could only imagine what the rest of the journey would look like. The next morning, Dana stepped out onto her porch with a cup of coffee, hoping for a fresh start. The crisp morning air was refreshing, but the atmosphere felt heavy. As she glanced down the street, she caught sight of Greg Tanner talking animatedly with a group of neighbors near his driveway. His gesturing arms and pointed glances in her direction made it clear who he was discussing. Dana sighed. Day 2, and the storm was already brewing. By midday, the murmurs had grown louder. At the local coffee shop where she stopped to grab lunch, she could feel the eyes of the barista and customers on her. A woman whispered to her companion loud enough for Dana to hear, "I heard she was rude to Greg Tanner yesterday. Can't believe she's the new chief." Dana set her jaw but said nothing. She paid for her coffee and sandwich, offering a polite smile despite the growing knot in her stomach. She had expected challenges, but she hadn't anticipated how quickly Greg's influence would ripple through the community. Later that afternoon, Dana received an email that made her blood boil. Subject line: Concerns about leadership. The email, signed by Greg Tanner and a handful of other neighborhood residents, accused Dana of unprofessional behavior during their encounter the previous evening. It painted Greg as a victim of her supposed arrogance and claimed her actions were already sowing division in the neighborhood. Dana read the email twice, then leaned back in her chair, exhaling sharply. She forwarded the message to the mayor's office, accompanied by a brief, factual account of the previous day's events. Before she could dwell on it, her phone buzzed with a call from Officer Martinez, one of her colleagues. "Chief, we've got a situation," Martinez said. "There's been a reported break-in at Greg Tanner's house." Dana froze. "A break-in?" "Yeah. He's claiming it happened sometime early this morning. Said he found the front door slightly ajar and some things out of place." Something didn't sit right with Dana. She grabbed her jacket and keys. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. When Dana arrived at Tanner's house, the scene was chaotic. 2 patrol cars were parked outside, and a few neighbors stood on the sidewalk, whispering and watching. Tanner greeted her with a smug expression that made her skin crawl. "Glad you could make it, Chief," he said, his voice dripping with false civility. "I'm sure you'll want to see this." Inside, Tanner led Dana and Martinez to the living room. A vase was overturned on the floor, and a chair had been knocked over. Tanner pointed to the back door, which was slightly ajar. "They must have come through there," he said, shaking his head. "It's getting to the point where we can't even feel safe in our own homes anymore." Dana's eyes swept the room, her instincts kicking in. The scene felt staged. The vase was intact despite being on the floor, and there were no visible signs of forced entry at the back door. "Did you notice anything missing?" Dana asked, keeping her tone neutral. "Not yet," Tanner admitted. "But they probably ran off before they could take anything when they realized I was home." Dana turned to Martinez, who avoided her gaze but gave her a small, knowing nod. He saw it too. This didn't add up. "We'll file the report and increase patrols in the area," Dana said, keeping her voice professional. "In the meantime, let us know if you find anything missing." Tanner smirked, crossing his arms. "I'm sure you'll want to assure the community this sort of thing won't happen under your watch, Chief." The jab wasn't subtle, but Dana refused to bite. She nodded once and left with Martinez, her mind racing. Back at the station, Dana sat with Martinez to review the case. "What's your take?" she asked. Martinez hesitated before speaking. "It feels off. Like someone wanted to send a message, not actually steal anything." Dana nodded. "Exactly. And who benefits from that message? Tanner's been gunning for me since I arrived." "You think he staged this?" Martinez asked, his brow furrowed. "I can't prove it yet, but my gut says yes," Dana replied. "He's building a narrative, painting me as incompetent and this neighborhood as unsafe under my leadership. He's not just coming after me, he's coming after the idea of me being here." Martinez leaned back in his chair, frowning. "How do you want to handle it?" "Quietly," Dana said. "For now. But if he keeps pushing, he's going to make a mistake. And when he does, we'll be ready." That night, Dana sat in her living room, the day's events playing over in her mind. The break-in felt like a turning point, a move in a chess game Tanner thought he could win. But he didn't know who he was up against. Dana stared out the window at the darkened street. For the first time since arriving in Maple Ridge, she felt a flicker of anger beneath her resolve. Tanner could spread rumors, stage crimes, and turn neighbors against her, but she wasn't going to back down. Not now, not ever. As she turned off the lights and headed upstairs, a single thought stayed with her: if he wants a fight, he's going to get one. The vandalism was the last straw. Dana stood in her driveway, staring at the spray-painted words scrawled across her garage door, "Go back where you belong." Her breath caught in her chest as a mix of anger and exhaustion surged through her. The bright red letters glared at her in the early morning light, a cruel reminder that Maple Ridge wasn't going to accept her without a fight. Her car wasn't spared either. The windows had been smashed in, shards of glass glittering on the pavement like broken promises. She called Officer Martinez, her closest ally at the station, who arrived within minutes. "Chief." Martinez hesitated, looking at the damage. "This is escalating." Dana nodded, her jaw tight. "It's not just about me. It's about control. Whoever did this wants to make sure I know I'm not welcome here, and that everyone else sees it too." Martinez studied the scene. "You think it's Tanner?" "I don't think," Dana said. "I know. But without proof, it's just my word against his." Later that day, Dana sat in her office, scrolling through emails when a new one caught her attention. Subject line: Anonymous Tip. The email contained no text, only an attachment labeled footage_001. MP4. Dana opened it cautiously. The video was grainy, taken from a home security camera, but it clearly showed Greg Tanner sneaking out of his house in the early hours of the morning. He carried a baseball bat and a can of spray paint. In the footage, Tanner walked purposefully toward Dana's home, pausing to look around before smashing her car windows and defacing her garage door. Dana's breath hitched. This was the proof she needed. Her phone buzzed. The caller ID was restricted. Dana hesitated before answering. "Chief Wright," she said cautiously. "You're welcome," a distorted voice replied. "Consider this a gift from someone who knows what Tanner's capable of. Just be careful. He won't go down without a fight." The line went dead before Dana could respond. The footage was a game changer, but Dana knew she had to play it smart. She called Martinez into her office and showed him the video. "This changes everything," Martinez said, his voice a mix of relief and caution. "But if you use this too soon, Tanner will claim it's fake or doctored. We need to tie this to a bigger pattern of behavior." "I agree," Dana said. "We'll keep this quiet for now, but it's going to be part of the case I build against him." As the day wore on, Dana's determination grew. She dug into Tanner's past, poring over records and reaching out to former colleagues. What she found confirmed her suspicions. Tanner had a long history of resentment and manipulation. One retired officer, a man named Carl Jennings, provided the key piece of the puzzle. "Tanner never got over your father beating him out for that promotion," Jennings said during their phone call. "Your dad earned it fair and square, but Greg always claimed it was political, like they only gave it to him because he was black." Dana's stomach tightened. She'd known her father had served in Maple Ridge years ago, but she hadn't realized the depth of Tanner's bitterness. "Why didn't anyone call him out on it?" Dana asked. "Greg's good at keeping his hands clean," Jennings replied. "He stirs the pot just enough to cause trouble but never gets directly involved, at least, not in ways anyone could prove. Until now, maybe." The next morning, Dana received another anonymous email, this time with a series of documents attached. The files detailed complaints against Tanner during his time on the force, ranging from harassment to allegations of misconduct. None had ever led to formal disciplinary action, but the pattern was clear. She printed everything out and spread it across her desk. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. Tanner's vendetta wasn't just about her, it was about her father, her family, and his need to protect his fragile sense of power. That evening, Dana sat in her living room, staring at the growing file of evidence. The footage, the complaints, the personal grudge, all of it painted a damning picture of Greg Tanner. But she also knew exposing him wouldn't be easy. Her mother called, breaking the silence. "How's it going, sweetheart?" Her mother asked, her voice warm but tinged with worry. Dana hesitated. "It's a lot. Tanner's not just trying to discredit me, he's going after everything Dad stood for." Her mother's voice softened. "Your father faced the same kind of hate, Dana. He always said, people will try to knock you down when they see you standing tall. That's when you have to stand even taller." The words hit Dana like a lightning bolt. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for her father's legacy and for every person who'd ever been told they didn't belong. "Thanks, Mom," Dana said quietly. "I needed that." The next day, Dana and Martinez met in her office to strategize. "We need a way to present all of this without it looking like a personal vendetta," Dana said. "Tanner's going to spin it that way no matter what." Martinez nodded. "What about the town meeting? It's the perfect stage to expose him." Dana thought for a moment. The meeting was less than 2 weeks away. It was risky, but it might be her best shot. "Let's do it," she said. "But we need more. If we're going to take him down, it has to be airtight." As the chapter ended, Dana felt a renewed sense of purpose. Tanner had made this personal, but he'd underestimated her. She wasn't just here to defend her position, she was here to fight for something bigger. And she wasn't going to lose. The town meeting loomed on the horizon, its significance growing with every passing day. Dana sat at her kitchen table, the files on Greg Tanner spread out before her like pieces of a complicated puzzle. She had the evidence, but the weight of what she was about to do felt heavier than ever. This wasn't just a confrontation, it was a battle for her future, her integrity, and the trust of a community that had yet to see her as one of their own. The morning brought an unexpected knock on her door. Dana opened it to find a middle-aged woman holding a tablet. She looked nervous but determined, her eyes darting toward the street as if checking for onlookers. "Chief Wright," the woman began, her voice low. "I'm Kim Sanderson. I live 3 houses down. Can I come in? I need to show you something." Dana stepped aside, intrigued. Once inside, Kim wasted no time, pulling up a video on her tablet. "This is from my home security system," she said. "I didn't want to get involved, but after what they did to your car, I couldn't stay quiet anymore." The video showed Greg Tanner standing in his driveway, talking to another neighbor. His voice was muffled, but his gestures were animated. Then, clear as day, he pointed toward Dana's house and said, "She needs to go. One way or another, we'll make it happen." Dana felt a mix of relief and frustration. The video added to the mountain of evidence against Tanner, but it also reinforced the depth of his campaign against her. "Thank you," Dana said, her voice steady. "This means a lot. I promise to use this carefully." Kim hesitated, then nodded. "I hope you do. Not everyone here agrees with him, you know. Some of us want you here. We just don't always know how to show it." Her words lit a spark of hope in Dana. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she thought. Dana spent the rest of the day consolidating her evidence. The anonymous footage of the staged vandalism, Kim's video, and the historical complaints against Tanner were damning, but she knew she needed more. Public opinion would be the deciding factor at the town meeting, and facts alone wouldn't sway everyone. At the station, she met with Martinez, who had been quietly gathering support among the officers. "Chief," Martinez began, "I've got a few people on board who are willing to vouch for you at the meeting. They've seen the work you've put in and know Tanner's full of it. They're just worried about blowback." Dana nodded. "I get it. This isn't just about me. Tanner's got deep roots here, and standing up to him isn't easy." Martinez leaned forward. "What's the plan?" "We're going to focus on facts," Dana said. "But we're also going to tell a story, one that shows people who Tanner really is and what I stand for. If we can make them see the bigger picture, we might have a chance." Later that evening, Dana received a surprising email from the mayor's assistant, Kelly Parker. The subject line read, "For your eyes only." The email contained a series of documents detailing incidents where Tanner had manipulated community leaders, bullied his way into neighborhood associations, and even used his influence to squash potential investigations into his behavior. Dana immediately called Kelly. "Why are you sending me this?" she asked, wary. "Because it's time someone stood up to him," Kelly replied. "He's been a problem for years, but no one's had the guts to take him on. You're the first person who's come close. If you're willing to see this through, I'll back you up." Dana felt a surge of gratitude. "Thank you. This is exactly what I need." "Be careful," Kelly warned. "Tanner's not the kind of man who takes losing lightly." With new evidence in hand, Dana spent the next few days preparing for the town meeting. She rehearsed her presentation with Martinez and her small group of allies, focusing on connecting the dots for the audience without making it seem like a personal vendetta. Each night, as she reviewed her notes and evidence, she thought of her father. His legacy loomed large in her mind, a reminder of why she had taken this job in the first place. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for the values he had instilled in her: justice, fairness, and the courage to do what was right, even when it was hard. On the eve of the meeting, Dana took a walk around the neighborhood. The streets were quiet, the air cool against her skin. She noticed Kim Sanderson on her porch and gave her a small wave. Kim waved back, a faint smile on her face. For the first time since arriving in Maple Ridge, Dana felt a flicker of acceptance. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As she returned home, her phone buzzed with a text from Martinez: "We've got your back, Chief. Let's take him down." Dana smiled, her resolve solidifying. Tomorrow was the moment of truth. Tanner had underestimated her, but he was about to see what she was truly capable of. The town hall buzzed with tension. Rows of folding chairs lined the room, filled with Maple Ridge residents, their faces reflecting a mix of curiosity, concern, and outright hostility. Dana sat near the front, her evidence neatly organized in a folder on the table before her. Martinez sat by her side, offering a reassuring nod. Greg Tanner stood across the room, a smug expression on his face. He seemed confident, chatting with his supporters and occasionally throwing Dana a glance filled with barely concealed contempt. This was his stage, his moment to solidify his influence. But Dana knew the truth would soon strip him of the power he wielded so recklessly. The mayor called the meeting to order, her voice firm but tinged with unease. "We're here to address ongoing concerns regarding the safety and leadership in Maple Ridge. Both Chief Wright and Mr. Tanner will have the opportunity to speak." Tanner strode to the podium first, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "I have served this community for decades. I've worked to make Maple Ridge a safe, welcoming place for all of us. But recent events have shown that our new leadership isn't aligned with those values. Break-ins, vandalism, and rising tensions, it's clear we're heading in the wrong direction." He paused, letting his words sink in, his eyes scanning the crowd. "I don't say this lightly, but Chief Wright's tenure has been marked by division and disorder. We need a leader who understands us, who's one of us." Tanner's supporters murmured in agreement. Dana clenched her fists under the table but kept her expression neutral. The mayor turned to Dana. "Chief Wright, you may respond." Dana rose and walked to the podium, her steps deliberate. She faced the crowd, letting the silence stretch for a moment before speaking. "When I came to Maple Ridge, I knew it wouldn't be easy," she began. "Change rarely is. But I never expected the resistance I've faced to be fueled by lies, manipulation, and fear." She placed a USB drive into the laptop connected to the projector. The first video played, Greg Tanner sneaking out of his house, bat and spray paint in hand, heading toward Dana's property. Gasps rippled through the audience. "This is Greg Tanner," Dana said, her voice steady. "The man who claims to stand for this community's safety. The man who staged a crime to undermine me." Tanner leapt to his feet. "That's doctored footage. It's fake." The mayor silenced him with a sharp look. "You'll have your chance to respond, Mr. Tanner. Let her finish." Dana continued, displaying the second video provided by Kim Sanderson, showing Tanner conspiring with another neighbor. The damning words, "She needs to go one way or another," played clearly. The audience shifted uncomfortably, whispers breaking out. "This isn't about safety or leadership," Dana said, her voice rising. "This is about one man's refusal to let go of the past." She pulled out the documents from Kelly Parker and placed them on the projector, highlighting Tanner's history of manipulation and complaints during his time as an officer. "For years, Tanner has bullied this community into submission. He thought he could do the same to me. He was wrong." The room was silent as Dana stepped back, letting the evidence speak for itself. Tanner tried to recover, rising to his feet again. "She's twisting this to suit her narrative," he blustered. She's tearing this community apart. Dana didn't respond. She didn't need to. The room had already shifted. Tanner's allies avoided his gaze, while others looked at Dana with new respect. Finally, the mayor stood. "Thank you, Chief Wright. Based on the evidence presented here, it's clear that Mr. Tanner has acted in ways that are not only unethical but harmful to our community. Chief Wright will remain in her position, and I'll be forwarding this evidence to the appropriate authorities for further investigation." The room erupted into applause, scattered at first but growing stronger. Dana exhaled, a weight lifting from her shoulders. As the meeting ended, residents approached Dana, some offering apologies, others expressing newfound support. Kim Sanderson gave her a warm smile as she passed, whispering, "I told you not everyone agrees with him." Outside, Martinez clapped her on the shoulder. "You did it, Chief. You took him down." Dana looked up at the clear night sky, a faint smile on her lips. "It's not just about taking him down. It's about rebuilding what he tried to destroy." The battle was over, but Dana knew the war for trust and unity in Maple Ridge had just begun. She was ready.